Okay, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you, Karen. All right, I'd like to call to order this regular board meeting of the Economy Conservation Authority on August 18th of 2022 at 5:02. Let's start with our land acknowledgement as usual. So we respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Massasauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to these first people for their care, for their teachings about our earth, our relations, and we honor those teachings. I just want to say a big welcome to Jeanette as our new CAO treasurer. This is her first board meeting. I think you've met most of the board probably, but not all as a big group. So here we are.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to continuing the good work of the organization.
Excellent. All right, so getting started then. Can I get a approval for today's agenda? Assuming there's nothing else. So Sherry and Diane, all in favor? So passed, thank you. Does anybody want to have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will continue. I believe we do not have any delegations tonight. Nope, no delegations. All right, can I get an approval for the meeting minutes from June 16th then, please? All right, Paula and Carl, thank you. All in favor? The minutes have unanimously passed. Thank you. Do we have any business arising from those minutes, Jeanette? Are we good to go? All right, well, I guess our first report for this evening is a little housekeeping here. I think we've all know about the contract award, but that's Jeanette, if you want to bring it forward to ratify. Report number 22055, contract award for the Jackson Creek Trail Bridge and trail improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So happy to bring this forward for ratification in our minutes and also for our auditors' purposes later. But we've also attached the various emails from the directors. Thank you, staff. Thank you to the board for doing it this way. It allowed us to keep the project on time and moving forward. We've been spending the time doing the design work, as I've referenced in my CAO report, but and as you know, the history between trying to do this with a tender, right, in terms of things. So again, the report is fairly it is straightforward for it to be ratified on the minutes today.
All right, thank you, Jeanette. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a quick question through you to Jeanette. Jeanette, there's also construction planned for the Jackson Creek Trail for the tie-ins for the water main and the sewer. And I see that's been deferred. Is all this going to happen at the same time, or do you think they'll get to working on the trail for our project, for Orca's project this year?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that question came up in our project team meeting. I also raised it when I did have a staff meeting with the City of Peterborough staff, and so ensuring that we were coordinated in terms of our timing. So it is on our radar, and at this point we don't see our project being delayed, but we are actually confirming that right now with the City of Peterborough staff.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Carl, a comment?
Yes, question? Thank you. Thank you. I support the moving forward with this as I did when the email was routed. And I just noticed in the report that DM Wells looks like did the design, engineering, and probably also supervising the construction. Have we any concern about the project management responsibilities, since DM Wells is kind of in there with 100%? If there isn't or we plan to have staff oversee things to make sure there isn't any issues that come out of the woodwork because there's no formal project manager.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer that. So the staff will actually be performing the project management or administration. So I'm the project sponsor, and our manager of conservation lands is doing the project management. So we have some checks and balances, if you will, for the project, but we do obviously need to work very closely with our engineers to ensure that the construction is then also done to the design work. So it ultimately will be staff.
Thank you.
So did you move that report, Carl?
Sure, I'll move the report to confirm it.
Thank you, Carl. Anybody else? Second? Diane, thank you very much. All right, all in favor of accepting the report, and thank you. Excellent. Report is passed. Which moves us to our next report for the evening, which is 2022-056, our budget considerations. So Jeanette, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I prepared this report for the board's consideration and comments and feedback. It is a similar type of a report that had been done in the past by the former CAO, but also just in considerations with the municipal election that is coming up. So as you already are aware, there are some transitions that are happening, not just at an election level, but also within the CAs in terms of moving to the transition plans and the timing that the province has put in place for all conservation authorities. So looking to see what the board's wishes are in terms of moving the budget process forward. There are a few recommendations in there in terms of our timeline, how we would build the budget, utilizing the transition plan that the board has already approved, but also keeping in place the steps and the processes that you've used in the past, such as establishing our performance objectives and things. So all of those things feed into the budgeting process. And I would like your approval and support that as a staff level, we can continue to work towards those things, and that you would consider a preliminary budget at your October meeting, understanding that in October, there would be an election, and that the new board perhaps would be approving the final budget. I have had some requests from some of our member municipalities looking to see if they could have a placeholder in their budget as they develop it. So this is here for the board's input and consideration and feedback to staff.
All right, thank you, Jeanette. Joe, you're pretty quick on that one. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Jeanette, for the report and for the really the plan as we move towards approval of a budget. I think your timeline's realistic. I think that at the October 20th board meeting, the board can hopefully give a rough approval to a draft budget, which will be finalized with the new board once it's formed after the next election in October. So I think this is realistic. It's good planning, and I support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, two questions. One is, I noticed the placeholder from the city at 1.5%. It'd be interesting to hear your perspective on whether that's a reasonable amount, given what we're facing. And the second question, which I'd also appreciate the comment on the top of page 3 of the report, you've listed a number of pieces of work that have to be done. Most of them are mandated as a requirement with the changes that are taking place. It would seem to me that that is a really significant amount of work. In some cases, there are multiple reports because we have multiple sites. And I would be interested to hear your perspective on how you plan to go about doing that. I know you've got a bit of time, but boy, it's a big lot of things.
Back to you, Andy. Could you be more specific on which ones you're talking about, just so we're all on the same page?
Yeah, I have to play with my screen here, so give me a second. So an ice management plan, an operations plan, an asset management plan, a conservation area strategy, and that would be for each conservation area that we have, a land inventory, and a watershed basis resource management strategy. All of those have to be completed by December 31st, 2024, and none of them are simple, if I can put it that way, and some of them are multiple plans. So it's a big chunk of work, and my concern is our staff are fully engaged right now. They don't have a lot of time where they don't have things to do, yet this is a pile of extra work on top of everything else that's being expected. So I was just interested in what Jeanette's view is on how we're going to approach this. I know there's a reference to perhaps getting outside resources. Do that, there's an increased cost. So that it's those 6 sort of plans.
Thank you for the clarity. Jeanette?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I certainly would agree. Our staff are fully engaged in terms of their work plans, their day-to-day work plans, and as I would sort of say, keeping the wheels on the bus on the road sort of thing. And they are, these mandated initiatives are in some ways, yes, very complex. So one is that Ontario Conservation is providing some advice and guidance. So they have work groups for each of these initiatives. They are providing advice and guidance on how to develop the plans, how to organize them and things. So we're not completely without some assistance and support, and we look forward to having more of that as things move forward. The second part is I am meeting with the staff individually, and I'm looking at what the current objectives are as we have it later on our agenda, but also what's on their internal work plans and what is manageable moving forward for 2023 and 2024. And so when we come back, what I'm recommending in September is that you will see some of these broken out over those 2 years. You will see some of them happening in 2023, some of them happening in 2024. And we're still doing an assessment whether or not we actually need any support over and above what Conservation Ontario is giving us. So more to come on that specific work plan, and specifically in September, we'll be able to give a better picture of what that is. There may be some things that have been on our work plans for some time that we're going to just put, on the back burner, that is in order to get these done.
Sorry, I think you were on mute, Andy, if you were commenting on that.
I'm sorry, I missed that, so go ahead. Did you ask me a specific question? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, sorry, Andy. I thought you were going to reply to Jeanette, but it looked like you were on mute. If not, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm good. I raised the point because it's not going to be simple. Is the point, and the challenge is it's easy to, in my view, it's easy to write all of these things out as requirements, and they went through the reg process to do that. But actually implementing them for a small CA like ours, it's quite a difference. If you're the TRC and there's 350 people working for them, they can probably find the resources to get this work done. We've got everybody going full tilt, working really hard, just getting our day-to-day stuff done. I'm not suggesting these aren't important pieces of work to be done. They are, but it's going to be a real challenge for us at a time when we've got a number of other issue. So that's, I appreciate that Jeanette is working on it, and hopefully there are, well, there will be some, as she said, templates that come out of Conservation Ontario, but it's going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging, and it probably will add to our bottom line. And the relationship to the 1.5% from the city, of course, is we're facing inflation. What was it last month? 7.6. But beyond that, it's not just the inflationary pressures. There's mission creep in the sense that we're going to have to be doing a bunch of stuff that we haven't had to do before during this period. So I certainly understand the city's desire to keep the limit at 1.5%, but that's going to be challenging to achieve.
Yes. Thank you, Andy. Kim, you want to defend your 1.5?
No. I'll leave that up to Richard Freeman and Sandra Clancy. But what I did want to ask, and to follow up on what Andy was saying, is I noted under the reserve levels too, there was an indication that we might be dipping into reserves there because there would need to be a phased replenishment of those reserves leading up to 2024. So I was just going to ask for you, Mr. Chair, if Jeanette, if you could expand on that a little. Do you see this ambitious plan in the next 2 years relying somewhat on our reserves?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, so we already do rely on our reserves, right? We are in our 2022 budget using reserves to fund what I'm going to call administration/operation costs. And from a financial sustainability, it's not, it's kind of the last approach that an organization would take. So when we talk about building our preliminary budget, from a strategy perspective, it would be really good to reduce the operating budget draw from reserves and only use your reserves for capital expenses or one-time expenses. That's sort of a financial principle of sustainability, if you will, that I've learned over my time. So that is going to be one thing that we will report out on October. So you can see we're kind of building up to the October board meeting as a large meeting that you're going to have lots of different information feeding into the budget process and how we would make some recommendations. And obviously you're going to want to understand what is our reserve level and what's the plan over a couple of years to draw on it, and what will it look like, and how are we going to replenish it. I do know that there was also a possibility of replenishing it from some of our revenues, so we'll also take that into the calculations and the sort of the opportunities that you have, and you'll see that as well. Good financial planning that doesn't happen just in 1 year, but it should look a couple of years out especially when you're dipping into your reserves on an ongoing basis, year over year.
Okay, thank you for that. And certainly it's probably preemptive, but it was something that I had noticed. Sometimes we do cut scope or don't do a project, unless we have the funding for it, as opposed to having to go into reserves, and we'll have a better sense of where that's headed, certainly as we move towards October. Thank you. And just one further follow-up with respect to the budget. I know with Jennifer Kleinsmith leaving, who was our plan review and permitting services manager, and that position was filled by Don Allen. I'm not sure if we dropped down a manager there when no one responded to the search for a replacement for Jennifer, if Dawn is now permanent or still interim, and are we looking at having another manager's salary added to that budget?
Mr. Chair, through you, so Dawn was made permanent prior to my arrival, and so that position has been filled. What we have been doing is backfilling his role in terms of things. So the salary for his old position is still in the budget, and we would look to solidify that with an actual applicant in that position, so that our service levels continue to be maintained in a very in an area that we see a lot of demand for. So so no, we're not dropping down a manager. Our status quo for our permanent FTEs.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Any other comments? No? Okay. Well, I think Jeanette's looking for a little direction here in terms of, if she does bring back a preliminary budget, is she supposed to hold to the 1.5 the city's asking for, or is there a number that we believe as a board is probably more reasonable for Jeanette to be shooting at? It was a tie there, but I'll go with Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeanette, we have had these projected requests before in the past, and while we have some regard for them for sure, we do have to keep our own house in order. And if the request that comes back to the member municipalities, including the city, is above and beyond what they'd hoped for, that's what we have to ask for. We may not get it, but that's what we have to ask for. So I really don't think it's possible, let alone prudent, to try to hold our budget to 1.5% for anyone. I just can't see how that's possible. We'll try to be as prudent as we can. We'll certainly won't be extravagant, but we've got to keep our own house in order. And you touched on that just briefly a minute ago. We have to wean ourselves off reserves for operating expenses. So that's not going to help keeping the levy down.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Andy?
Yeah, I generally agree with Joe's comments. We have to be respectful of the city. They do pay half the freight for just about half the freight for Orca, and so their opinion is an important opinion, and we have to consider that. But as Joe says, we need to develop a budget that works for us as an organization. Now, depending on how insistent the city is, you may want to, in October, say, here's what I think we need, whatever that might be, 3.25, 3.5. But come back and say, if it's going to be 1.5, this is what we're not going to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be a useful exercise. I'm not trying to create work for you, but as the governors to have those choices. Anyways, I think Joe hit it right. We've got to do it for our organization, but at the same time, I'm cognizant of the fact the city's carrying the majority of the freight on this, and you have to be respectful of what they say.
Thank you. I agree too. Like we definitely can't be drawing on reserves for operating. I think that'll be the real telltale there. So I guess in terms of direction then, what would we like to give Jeanette? Like just let the numbers play out and see what they turn, and not worry about replying to the city or City of Kawartha Lakes at this point. And we'll have a better answer by October.
I can also add to that, Mr. Chair, in the sense that if we are utilizing our performance objectives that take that work and spread it over 2 years, but we also use the transition plan that has been sent to all of the municipalities, which again will be very important come June of 2023 when everyone needs to sign off on that transition plan. There are scenarios already in place there in terms of things, financial scenarios. So we certainly as staff can use that as a starting place to give the board a picture of what it would look like. And then also some other scenarios if we had to change the financial request, or at least the portion, at least I was going to say the portion of the apportionment that the municipalities have. And so that they can see very clearly what the ask is and what it's going to achieve from an objective perspective. I think when we start to talk about percentages, it becomes a little difficult for us in particular. And I thought a lot about this, I really have, especially given my municipal background. But when we start to talk about percentages in such a budget that is only relative to a smaller portion of a larger budget, that number becomes very skewed in terms of actually giving you the real picture. So if we come back and we can explain to the board and to the municipal staff, this is the scenario, this is how we built the budget, this is what it means for you in terms of the percentage increase in the apportionment to you individually, I think that will help create a better picture of why we're asking for it, as opposed to just a global number of over the overall budget in terms of things. And it is the terminology, is the framing of the budget that we're also looking to test run because we need to have it all in place come January of 2024. So some of this is, which is a lot of work for a staff perspective, but I would rather take a run at testing how we're presenting the information, how we're also doing this from an internal perspective and restating some of our budgeting perspective, our own financial statements, and do that this year so that when the next budget comes around, we have more experience with doing it rather than just waiting until 2024 budget. So those are some of my thoughts, if that helps the board in terms of things.
Any comments? Anyway, I think you're taking the right approach, Jeanette, in terms of lining this up for what the future is going to look like anyway. And better to get that out of the way now and work the kinks out as we move. So I think your direction's right. I think I've heard that the timing is right, and I think most municipalities are going to put a plug number in for Orca anyway. So I think we're just the best thing to do is just go ahead and build our budget the way we think we need it, and go from there and see how the chips fall in October. I don't know, Mike, you were going to make a comment earlier. I don't know whether you still need to.
No, I'm good. Everyone's made comments that I was going to make.
Okay. All right. Is that direction enough for you, Jeanette? Are you comfortable with that?
I am comfortable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is everybody else comfortable with that direction? Excellent. All right. Then I guess we just need to receive this report then, seeing as you have direction. So I get somebody to receive it. Carl and Andy, thank you. All in favor of the receiving? Perfect. Thank you, Jeanette. It moves on to reports for information. Your CAO monthly report, 22057. What have you been up to?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Meeting regularly with you and the Vice Chair has been also very helpful. But I do want to express my appreciation and thank you to the board for the overlap time between Dan and myself. It's incredibly rare to have that, and you really served the organization well in terms of that overlap. So we spent time together. I listed a few things that we've been able to do together, and in the report, I also do want to just highlight the sort of the paragraph around the FedDev projects. I'm going to continue to add that in all of my monthly CAO reports so that the board receives an update on things. It is a tight timeline, really, at the end of the day. Everything needs to be done and implemented by the end of December. And then reports and financial claims and things happen into the first part of 2023. But everything is finished, done by March of 2023, as you already know. So we really want to keep project managing on time, on budget, and then also working with our municipalities. So we do appreciate those municipalities have given us feedback around the design, the accessibility design in particular, and more to come on our May windstorm that we had. So you've received updates along the way, but that just gives you a little bit of a snapshot on the financial component. And we're waiting to hear more information from our insurance company around the business case, whether we, go that route or not. We still have some work to do, but we have, which is on hold until we hear back from our insurance company. And that's it,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
No, well, thank you for the report. Andy, any comment?
Yeah, I just picking up on your comment about we had more work to do. I just want to make sure that, and I'm sure we have, but just want to hear it from you that nothing that we're delaying in terms of work has any kind of public safety issue that we've done that. And second of all, if I read the report, I don't have it right in front of me. I think it's just north of $40,000 is the cost. And if we're looking at an insurance claim, if we're not able to, or they're not willing to cover that, where's our source of funding?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, so absolutely none of the pending work has any implication for any of our public safety, our trails or anything like that. That has been addressed already, and as a priority for sure. And so there is more work that can be done to clean up, which is not, on our trails and things. And we're waiting to hear back around what the insurance company will cover and how much they will do that. We also have a deductible that we would need to pay. So it's sort of the financial business case, if you will, around whether or not we go ahead and do the work or we put in a claim and they will process that. And if we do not put in a financial claim, then these funds have already been expended, and they're in our variance reports. So we've already spent the money, whether doing the immediate issues, addressing the immediate issues, whether it be public safety or environmental issues. So the money is spent, and that means that staff are just watching our budgets very closely and making sure that we don't overspend in other ways. So there's probably some trade-offs as we move into the later part of the year around some things. But when we come back and report in October, again, really building this October report is board meeting up because there's a lot of information. When we come back in October, you will have a forecast as well on our 2022 variance. So what we're projecting we will need for the rest of the year, and what our balance will be, our surplus will be, taking into consideration this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeanette, given the extent of the damage that was caused in this area on May 21st, and considering how much property Orca actually owns, I know it's preliminary, but about $25,000 damage really isn't huge. It could easily have been much, much more, especially when we consider how much property we really own. Now, the lost revenue insurance won't pay for that, I don't believe. As far as that $25,000 cleanup costs or damage to buildings and so forth, perhaps But it's really going to be determined by how big that number is and how much is our deductible. Do you know what that number is right now?
Yeah, so our deductible is $25,000. That is what the insurance company is assessing. So Orca does have what they call business interruption insurance and things. So the lost revenue is what they have asked for as well, not just the expenses. But we're also indicating to the insurance company that there will be more expenses, and so it's all one claim. So they had a transition on their end, which has delayed us getting this report back. And once we do, certainly staff will bring it back to the board to let you know what what a good path forward is here. From my experience, I do agree. Given the land mass that we have, I agree with you. There was a lot of damage, but it could have been a lot worse. That also does speak to sort of the ongoing maintenance, the hazard tree management that we have, how we manage the land in a go forward basis to help mitigate any of these natural disasters that we have. And as we know, they're going to continue to happen, right? They're not slowing down. They're going to continue to happen. So putting some of those plans in place in the future will also help us.
Thank you. How long after the damage has happened, how long do you have to make a claim? Is it a year, or do you know?
I don't know that particular answer. I do know that staff were actually on this particular issue before I arrived, and saw the opportunity to do a site visit with the insurance staff and things. So there's probably going to be some sort of timelines, and they might be different, right? Our business continuity interruption insurance might be different than actually making some other claims and that sort of thing. But staff engaged them as quickly as we could on this particular. So we're hoping for a favorable response.
Fair enough.
All right. Thank you, Jeanette. Would you like to receive the report, Joe? Second it? Kim, do we have any more discussion on that? All right, then all in favor? And approved. Thank you. Received, I guess. All right, next report, Jeanette, is which one? Sorry, lost my spot there.
I
Activity.
believe
Yeah, second quarter financial and activity report. 22/058.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a report that the board has seen in the past and would be on this agenda. Just wanted to point out that, again, we will come back with a more comprehensive financial report in October that will include a forecast, a year-end forecast. So these are the normal, I'm going to say, template types of reports that you've seen in the past, the operating and the capital, and then also the permits report. I did have an opportunity to speak with our chair and vice chair in our regular meetings, and a suggestion might be to also include some enforcement stats that we have. I haven't spoken to staff yet here, but I think it also would be a great opportunity to enhance that last report there that's attached in terms of things. It gives you another picture in terms of things. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but if you have a really tough question, I'm going to ask the staff to come.
And Kim?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I don't think it's a really tough question. I was just curious, the provincial groundwater monitoring, it indicated that we missed our spring sampling and there were some technical issues. And I just wanted to ask for a little more information if it had anything to do with our equipment or, something that would indicate a further expense to the authority, or what the technical issues might have been.
Great question. I'm going to ask if our manager of watershed management can be brought into the meeting. That again, those things happened prior to my arrival, and it's probably better that you get a better answer from Meredith.
Absolutely. Welcome, Meredith.
Great question. I'm going to ask if our manager of watershed management can be brought into the meeting. Again, those things happened prior to my arrival, and it's probably better that you get a better answer from Meredith.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome, Meredith. At least we know somebody's watching it on YouTube.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair. Now that I've muted my YouTube, I will do my best to respond to that. I'm actually looking for some of the correspondence I had from Gord Earl because he coordinates all of the PGMN information. So he did provide me with some updates. We did have some connectivity issues with our electronics earlier this year. So the majority of them have been resolved. There's a couple that we're still troubleshooting. And so Gord indicated that we should be back in business for all of our fall sampling.
So just to follow up, Meredith, are these, I'm trying to picture how you do this groundwater sampling. You're literally drawing a sample from the well and submitting it, or where does the electronic connectivity come in? Or is it an automated system that feeds results through?
Through you, Mr. Chair, those are great questions. So what it actually is, it's the direct read cable. So there's equipment, instrumentation in the well, and you have to connect that to a laptop to download the information. So when the information wasn't downloading, we had to figure out why. Is it the instrumentation? Is it the laptop? Is it the connectivity in between? So we were able to figure out the problem. So it was actually the direct read cables. But it takes a little while to figure that out. So the data could only be downloaded from 9 of the 11 wells. So that is, we're in the process of resolving that and ordering the new equipment.
Well, that's great. Thanks for the troubleshooting out there. Pass it on to Gord. Thanks so much. And Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move with the report when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, you had a question as well?
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And I don't know if Terry Cox is on the meeting tonight. It may, because this question may be directed at her. It deals with the risk management plans on page 39 of our agenda. All the required risk management plans were completed by January of 2022, but apparently there's negotiation of risk management plans required for completion by 2024. Apparently there's other risk management plans that we need to have completed in about a year and a half time. And I wondered how many of those are there, because right now none of them have been completed. So if Terry's not on the meeting, this one may have to come back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Meredith also, Terry reports to Meredith. So our manager of watershed management might be able to help us out with that one.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I can certainly respond to that. So what that report was referring to were the risk management plans that were originally identified in the assessment report. Those are the ones that had to be completed by January 1st. So those were all completed. The outstanding ones that were referred to in that report, those are the new ones that were identified in the Norwood area as a result of the changes to the wellhead protection area when the drinking water system was upgraded in Norwood. So those have a different deadline because that change didn't happen until 2019. So you've got 5 years after that date. So that's what that's referring to. Does that answer your question?
It does. Is that just one RMP to cover that wellhead protection area?
No, through you, Mr. Chair, risk management plans are negotiated directly with the person undertaking the activity. So these ones are for things like home heating oil tanks, That's primarily what we deal with in that area. There could be other activities that are subject to Part 4, which is where the risk management plans come into effect. And so part of what Terry does is go and do visual inspections, windshield surveys, and goes and confirms all of the significant drinking water threats that require risk management plans. Those numbers may also change as a result of the updates to the source protection plan that are required, but those won't come into effect until after 2024. So just for everyone's information, you will see those requirements for new risk management plans happen over time. It's not something that just gets completed and you never revisit.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. Just quickly, do you know how many RMPs have to be negotiated due to this one extra protection area?
I don't have that number in front of me. Through you, Mr. Chair, it's around 24, I believe. It's less than 100. Does that help?
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Andy, you had another question?
Yeah, a couple questions on that section there. First one on the action plan, or it refers to the rehabilitation that we're doing at the gravel pit. And if my memory serves me right, and it doesn't always, I think we're under some sort of order to get that done. I think it's from the MNRF. And I'm just wondering if I am remembering that correctly and whether we are, in fact, fulfilling the direction that we've been given.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm able to answer that question in part, and if there's more details, I'm happy to bring in the manager of conservation lands. But we were actually just talking about this today in terms of things. So we do have an order to get that work remediation completed, and I do believe it is by the end of the year. And we're hoping to start it sometime in September. There has been a bit of a delay, but and there is some budget money already set aside to do that work. So we're happy to report back once we have a better work plan for it. But that's my understanding.
So we are going to make the deadline.
That is what staff are working towards. Yes. Yes.
Okay. The second question had to do with, there's an entry here. If I can find it again. It's a reference to refurbishing roads and parking areas. I think it's page
8.
Thank you. And it says funding for this project has been reallocated to support the cost of replacement of the new campground washroom facilities, period. Then there's two words, will need. They just seem to be hanging out there. I don't know what we will need, or whether that's just simply a low typo that got inserted there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it is actually, and I did note that earlier this afternoon, but I think that's not the completed version that ended up in the agenda package. But so the funding was diverted to the FedDev projects for that, and so that at this point we will need to consider it in the 2023 budget.
Okay, good. And the final question here is on the permits form, and you alluded to the enforcement files. So I noticed that there are 10 that have been resolved, which is good. Have they been resolved because people have come into compliance? Have they been resolved because people have simply abandoned what they were doing? Or did we have to take action against those folks?
Mr. Chair, so they've completed filing all of the various components to their application. So I would say they came into compliance with it, and that's how they were closed. I'm not aware of any of those files being completed because we actually issued an order.
And in your view, and you may not be able to answer this directly right away, is there any reputational risk items in the 35 that are outstanding? So are we going to open up the Examiner one day, or are we going to read social media and find out there's something going on with one of those 35?
Mr. Chair, no, there are no reputational risks in those. And we would, if that was the case, the board would be well informed before you read it in the newspaper. But at this point, there is none.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. Anything else? All right, I'm a little disappointed in Joe for not finding the dangling sentence out there. That's usually his forte.
There is a typo in one of the blocks, but it was interesting. It's talking about marking hardwood trees. It says making. I just let it go.
Good.
Thank you. I've ceased to be disappointed. Thank you, Joe.
Continuous improvement.
And through you, to you, Jeanette, actually, I did have one question that was around, I think it's page 6 of this appendix, is preparing the strategy for all authority-owned lands. And it says not yet started. But I thought we had already done a number of the conservation areas. So to me, that would be started. I guess the question would be what's started and what hasn't started, or is there like a different list of things that were supposed to be started?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what's happened is we've accidentally grabbed a draft while staff were working on this. So I can say that there has been some work, but what that specific initiative actually speaks to is also one of the mandated initiatives that we have from the province. So there is more work to be done in order to meet the mandated from the province around it. It is actually the conservation land strategy. That is specifically what it is. So staff have done some work, but not enough to get us to a point where we can say we're 50% or, done.
No green bar for you.
No green bar on that one. No.
All right. Thank you. All right. Kim, you still want to receive this report? All right. Seconder, Paula, thank you. Any other discussion? Oh, okay. All in favor of receiving? Excellent. Thank you, everybody. And then looks like our last report is 2022-059, the annual statement of activities for the Autonomy Conservation Fund. You bring us up to speed with the fund.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is an annual report that the board would have seen in the past, and it brings a fund accounting forward, but it also attaches the annual statement from the Community Foundation of Greater Peterborough. And I have made contact with them and been back and forth, so it's been nice to meet them. And it does indicate what our allocation would be for 2022, which is a little bit more than what we had originally budgeted for in 2022. We will find out in December roughly what our allocation will be for 2023. And they're sort of waiting around any direction from the province. There is some legislation out there that says that they might need to allocate 5% on an ongoing basis from their fund, which we would then receive 5%, or the board might have an ability to make a different decision. So of the money that was budgeted for 2022, just as a reminder, we put $20,000 in conservation lands and $15,000 into our environmental programs. The balance, which is about $8,500, is being directed at this point to support our federal Dove projects as part of our 1/3 contribution to those projects.
Excellent, thank you. Andy, do you still have a question, or is that from last time?
No, I have a question on this.
Okay.
And again, I might be confused. So in looking at the statement, it only shows that we had $100 of donation income. Because if I understand the way this works, any money that we fundraise is going to go into the foundation and become part of our endowment. But I thought we had raised a fair amount of money, well, relatively, in terms of our trail work. And I'm wondering why that doesn't flow through the foundation and then come back out. Now, it could be that we don't do it that way, but I'm just curious, because I believe we've had donation income well in excess of $100. And if it doesn't flow into the foundation, are we still in a position to issue a charitable receipt if it's coming to us directly? I think we are, but anyways, if you could just clarify that, that would be great.
So happy to, Mr. Chair. So through you. So I will go back and look in terms of what if there was some direction around ensuring that the funds were directed through to the community foundation. I can say that they're not. I can say that we have received them. We have received the funds, and we are holding those funds, and we have issued tax receipts for those funds. So that process is fine. Whether or not we take those funds and then give them to the community foundation is the part that I would just like to check internally first. I can say it hasn't happened, but that doesn't mean that we can't do that.
And I'm not sure whether that's the right process or not. I'm just asking.
Right. So as staff, let me go back and do some research and see if that's feasible, if it makes sense, and it, we can leverage what we have, right, in terms of what we get back in the future, or if we're going to need those funds to actually offset what our 1/3 might be, which might be the other thing I'm thinking has happened. We've kept those fundraising dollars because they're contributing to our 1/3 towards the project that we told the federal dev people that we were going to raise in terms of, as opposed to giving them to the community foundation to hold and then disperse. So I will do some research on that. I appreciate that, but I can tell you that the tax receipt process is working fine. We've issued tax receipts as requested.
Thank
I
you.
don't know, Jeanette, if you want to phone a friend or not, but Denise was jumping up and down there. I think she
That's
might have been
okay.
able to.
That's all right. I would rather take this back and let me do some research as opposed to trying to debate it. So I appreciate the question, and I will. I'll do that.
Right, Joe, you have
Well, I mean, yeah, Jeanette can certainly go back and check, and this may not answer Andy's question, but I do recall, and perhaps some of the other board members will recall this as well, that a couple of meetings ago, we approved setting up a separate reserve fund specifically for the Jackson Creek Trail. And that's where I think all the donations for that particular project went. So I don't know if they'd show up in this particular statement or not, or if they just went directly to the reserve fund. So again, Jeanette, you take a look at that, but that may not solve the question, but I think that was the direction of the board a couple of meetings ago.
I'm aware of that direction. So I certainly will. Let me go back and do some investigation. We want to be able to leverage the money that we have and get the best interest rates and make the money that we can in the best efficient ways possible. So I will investigate. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Anybody want to receive this report? Carl?
Yep.
And Tracy? Excellent. All in favor? Thank you, everybody. All right, on to correspondence and media coverage. I don't think there's any actual correspondence, but maybe some media highlights. Anybody want to bring forward or discuss?
And it's the standard report that staff have prepared in the past.
Mhm.
just like to highlight the fact that we did have an extra bit of media around the Federal Dove announcement and an opportunity to help also get the request out there for additional funding to help support that 1/3. So, and we do appreciate where staff work very closely with our partners, our municipal partners and other partners to help push out messages as well. So that cooperation has been well serving, whether it's our low water response committee or whatever it is. We do appreciate pushing out our messages through our partners.
Excellent, thank you. I guess we need to receive those media reports. Wants to receive them? Tracy. And Sherry, you good? All right, Tracy and Sherry, all in favor? Thank you, everybody. We're good. Open forum. Anybody have anything they want to bring up or bring forward? Chat about? No? I'll bring one thing up. I did get the opportunity to meet Angela Coleman while I was at AMO, and she will be the new GM for Conservation Ontario. So it was very nice to meet her, and I'm sure we'll see more from her in the coming future. That was nice. Other than that, that's all I have. I don't know that we have to receive an open forum, but we're lucky enough to not have a closed session this time around. It's I think it's a first. It's quite nice. So nothing to do there. No reports from closed session. Our next meeting is September the 22nd. Conservation Ontario with their new GM has their meeting on September 26th. Then we have a Source Water Protection Authority meeting on, well, we don't, but the authority does, on October 20th. That's everything coming up. Anything else before we call for an adjournment? Well, congratulations, Jeanette, on your first meeting. Hope you got a few takeaways, but you did very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate it.
All right. Who wants to adjourn? Joe? Anybody else? 1 second, as an adjournment? Andy? All in favor?